Many people think that interviewing users is an easy task, and oftentimes it really takes to be an observer of an user interview being conducted by a professional qualitative researcher before people begin to really appreciate the nuances that it involves. It's extremely gratifying, though, to see the patterns evolve of all the hard work that you put in, right, as an interviewer. Um, and I think this is a skill that anybody dealing with users like product and other customer functions should have at least a little bit of, so they can see the quality difference in some of these things as they observe themselves conducting these interviews. In this video, I'm just going to focus on a few non-verbal aspects one should focus on for an in-depth interview. And these are purely based on my experiences as a researcher and as an interviewer from a user perspective. I'm sure I left out many aspects here. If I did, please feel free to suggest them in the comments. And depending on the interest of this video, I might follow this up with a longer video on things to keep in mind as a generic video for an interview. What are the things in general that you need to keep in mind? But today's video, I'm just going to focus on a few things which are primarily based on the non-verbal aspects that you should focus on. So here are some tips. Tip number one, with regard to eye contact and smile, many people don't know whether it is a good idea to keep eye contact. Some people say it is a good idea, some people say it's not. Some people say it's a good idea to smile, some people say it is not. And I feel that there is no cookie cutter answer for this, and it is really different for different contexts. And different contexts really need different behaviors from you as an interviewer. For instance, when you're trying to establish a rapport in a deep interview where you're um, really going in depth into some of the nuances or some topics, uh, and if the topic is neutral, only if the topic is neutral, you want the participant to connect and at the beginning of the interview, right? So you can have some eye contact. It's perfectly fine to give a genuine smile. And this really helps establish a rapport and helps with the quality of information that you glean through the course of the interview. But it also comes with a caveat. And this is not something that you should continue through the interview, because in the middle of an interview, when you're doing specific techniques like laddering, or when you're trying to go deeper into the psychodynamics related to certain aspect of what you're interested in, it's best not to engage with any lasting eye contact or a smile, as it really distracts and tends to reduce the quality of the data you may generate. And you might be surprised, but this is something I've observed firsthand as an interviewer. So this is what I typically employ towards the initial parts of the interview. When with neutral topics, I try to create eye contact. I try to create some very innocuous, what is it, icebreakers and things like that, which all connect with the user. And then I would also try to smile towards the initial part of the interview. But when they are deep in their thoughts and they're trying to talk through things, it's best not to disturb that scene and let them talk as it flows in their mind. Second tip is where to sit. Your job is not to be distracting the interviewer, so this is something you can constantly keep in mind. So do not face the interviewee directly where you are directly in front of them, or even sit on the periphery of the eye where it is a distraction and they seem to notice you, right? So sitting at an angle facing away from the interviewee has usually worked for me. And if it's a meeting room where there is less room for you to create that and you're in a table, I sometimes purposely draw my chair back a little bit to create this angle with the interviewee and have really found this to be effective. So that's one thing you can try. Tip number three, what to wear. And this is should be a commonsensical thing. The intent here is not to distract, and that's a general ground rule. Common sense does go a long way here. It's really wise not to wear something that stands out in the context and for the profile of the user. So anything pronounced you do and drastically different from the context and how the user is likely to be dressed up, is generally a distraction from your what you're wanting to accomplish. So something that doesn't stand out is fine. It doesn't need to be like professional, or it doesn't need to be casual. Again, like the previous comments, there is no one size fits all. It really depends on the type of the user as well as the context. Okay. Um, Tip number 4 is about non-verbal cues that lead the participant. Example would be like nodding whenever you hear an insight that you're interested in. This might come as involuntary for you as an interviewer if you are, um, beginning in your career, or if you haven't done this enough. This might creep in. So something to actively keep an eye on or be mindful about is to be careful about your non-verbal cues, and the nods and things like that that you give out as part of the interview. An analogy that's worth keeping in mind is interview should really flow like a neutral river at its own pace, um, and with the natural frictions that they experience as they explore different topics. You should be careful not to introduce any ripple of your own. Your job is not to create anything of your own. Leave the scene intact as an interviewer. I think this has helped me tremendously as I evolved through my career as an interviewer from a user research standpoint. Lastly, the cues that you want to the participant to notice, like if you want them to dwell on a topic, you can use them sparingly, just enough to um, expand on any topic of interest. Example, like a nod whenever you're giving a sign of approval for them to actually continue with that topic, to draw the interview if you are sticking with a certain time frame, etc. You don't need to make it verbal. They notice these things as well, so you can understand what drives the interview, and you can use what is necessarily minimal in that context to guide the interviewee rather. So nods or ums or okays, some of them are verbal, but even non-verbal things like nods, sparingly introduced would be helpful here. Okay, so this is all I wanted to share today. Just wanted to thank you for the engagement that you've given me for the couple of videos that I've produced. I would be curious to hear your thoughts on what topics are of interest, so I can think about it if I continue creating a few more videos like this. So, always curious to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much and have a good day.